Hello and welcome to a show that we might never ever do again, called YakiCineSoba. And so we were going to talk what we're going to talk in a minute for another show that didn't end up happening, but we're all congregated here. We've all seen the serial in question and we all have some things to say about it. So yes, so this will be miscellaneous additional content, and if anything else ever comes up similar, it'll go under the same YakiCineSoba banner, I think. So it is me, Clive Davis, and with me is
Nick
and
Geno.
There we go.
All right.
And yes, we're going to be talking about the first of the three 30s Flash Gordon serials, simply Flash Gordon.
From 1936, well, there's just the great Buster Crabbe there.
What's
Yes,
that?
this is from issue number 2 of a short-lived film periodical called YakiCineSoba magazine, and I will be sourcing a lot of the information about the serial from a interview that was conducted with Buster Crabbe.
Okay.
That is great, because actually, as I watched and then got really excited about watching it, I went online and could find very little information that was at least available online about the making of this and behind the scenes stuff.
I'm not familiar with the YakiCineSoba zine, Geno. From when does that date, and what's the remit of that? What kind of stuff did they cover?
It was essentially a film periodical. A friend of mine worked on it, Ray Cabana Jr., and actually the art director was someone who would go on to work, I believe, do some special effects work for Ghostbusters, a fellow by the name of Michael Gross.
Okay.
Okay. So it's a zine.
So he was the art director on this.
It's a zine from back in the day, because that looks like in quite good condition. Is that a reprint or something? Or?
Well, he had these stored for quite a long time, 1966.
Wow. Wow.
Well, that makes sense, because at that point, Buster Crabbe would have been available for interviewing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Before he ended his career in that Fred Olen Ray movie, The Alien Dead, right?
Yes. Not the most auspicious way to end.
I like The Alien Dead. It has a certain regional low-budget charm.
All right.
And it's better than most of the shit that Fred Olen Ray made later.
Okay.
Or more charming, at least. Even if it doesn't have a naked Linnea Quigley in. So anyway,
so, Clive,
yes.
So yes, Star Wars, Clive. Star Wars.
Fuck off. We were talking Star Wars.
I thought I had this early on in the show. Obviously these days, Flash Gordon often comes up in reference to the influence it had on one young George Lucas. But what's interesting about Clive is a rare case of somebody who evidently watched the Flash Gordon serials before he saw Star Wars, which makes sense if you're my granddad's age, but makes less sense if you're Clive's age.
Right.
So do you want to explain to us, just for a second before we talk about the serial, how in God's name you saw Flash Gordon 1936 before you saw Star Wars? Yeah,
Flash Gordon made a huge influence on me because they started rerunning them, I think, in the summer holidays, very early in the morning on BBC Two. And I just stumbled across, one summer morning, woke up early, turned the television on, and it would have been the second chapter or something of a Flash Gordon serial. It might have been this first Flash Gordon serial, I think. And then they went on to show the others, and they showed Buck Rogers as well with Buster Crabbe. And I just fell in love with these things. I thought they were amazing. Like, they were like nothing else I'd ever seen. And they had these cool, like really loud buzzing rocket ship things, and they ended on these cliffhangers, and then you had to wait and find out what happened. And for some reason I was really struck by, I remember spending a great part of my childhood like squat over a notebook and writing out chapter titles for projected serials that I might make. one day. So
Wow.
just as an example, so in Flash Gordon, you've got the Tunnel of Terror, the Destroyer Ray, Tournament of Doom, Into the Claws of Tigron. And I remember like thinking up entire serials in my head, and then not rather than writing the scripts, just writing under Swamp
The episode
of Doom and the Tentacles from Hell. And I would do this for hours at a time. And for some reason that kept my little childhood brain occupied. So yeah, I really went for serials. And then yeah, when I saw Star Wars, I was like, oh, this is Flash Gordon with all the good stuff removed and boring, and who the fuck's this Luke Skywalker douche, and fucking Han Solo, yawn, Princess Leia, get out of here. It's just not.
Okay.
Not in
Yeah, I have to go with Clive on this one, because I wholeheartedly agree. Because if you just, for example, take a look at the lovely, gosh darn it, Princess Leia has nothing. I don't know if you can see her on the lovely Princess Aura. The lovely Princess Aura, played by what's her name, Priscilla Lawson.
Yes, I will agree with you strongly. That's actually the thing that struck me most about watching this now, was how sexless Star Wars is in comparison to Flash Gordon. Flash Gordon is, and I suppose when I watched the Flash Gordon movie in 1980 when it came out, the Dino De Laurentiis one with the guy who immediately got fired or left, and then they never made the sequel. Yeah, that was the thing. Even as a kid, I was like, whoa, there's a lot of flesh on display in this action movie. And their version of Princess Aura was also smoking hot. But yeah, both Dale and the princess are...
Gene Rogers as I immediately went online to see if there were any Tijuana Bibles about Dale Arden's character. But anyway,
Dylan Rossi had one though.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, awesome.
So we should probably just put a bit of context for this. So Flash Gordon, the character, created to compete with the Buck Rogers character. Which I think Buck Rogers actually began as I think as a Buck Rogers. It didn't start in comics.
Yeah, as a novel, I think.
Yeah, and then it went on to conquer all these other formats. Although the Buck Rogers serial didn't come until after the success of the first two Flash Gordons.
Yeah,
also with Buster Crabbe. So Alex Raymond created in 1934. For the life of me, I kept looking up. It just kept telling me it was a King Features Syndicate. Syndicate. But it didn't tell me which fucking periodical it was actually in. I couldn't, but it was.
Well, it would have been in a bunch of. It would have been a bunch of them. That's the nature of the syndicates were, as it was with later on with Peanuts and Garfield.
Right.
Syndicates sold them to all kinds of newspapers, so they would have been in newspapers all over America, local newspapers, big
but
ones.
I'm not sure where it debuted or where it started. But it was in a Sunday newspaper comic strip. Ran until fucking quite late, right? Like 1993 or something.
Yep.
That's before they started getting into the reprints as well. This thing ran forever. Alex Raymond died in 1956, so it went on without him. But I did have a chance to. I don't know if either of you have read any of the Alex Raymond strips.
Sadly, no. Actually, I tried to find a decent, cheap copy, and then it was not. The cheap copy I found was not readable. Like it was. It stretched the art. And
yes,
it was awful.
I know that version you mean. It's like a cheap Kindle, right? And it's garbage. But I'm vaguely familiar with it. And when we were talking on our other show, the comics one about Basil Wolverton's stuff and how he copied Flash. I mean, Flash Gordon is kind of interesting because it does have that rip-roaring, slightly slapdash something. There's a new plot twist every few frames. Which I guess makes sense if you're thinking of it as a few panels in a comic strip every Sunday, right? But it's of a slightly more well thought out, slightly more well drawn than the.
I would say not slightly. I would say much.
Yeah, okay. Fletcher Hammond.
Alex Raymond was a great artist.
Yeah, Basil Wolverton.
Better than some of the people who copied him. Yeah.
but it still has that slight. But that's more of a time issue, I think, rather than because things have progressed somewhat. It's got that slight minimal charm to it. But yeah, great draftsman and all that. But yeah, so that's that's the well from all this draws, because of course, as well as these serials, like you mentioned, there's the Mike Hodges film, and there was a TV series in the 50s.
Yes, and the Filmation cartoon was actually probably the first thing that I saw. The first Flash Gordon I would have seen would have been when I was really small, and it would have been a Filmation TV series.
Yeah. Was that Defenders of the Earth, or was that something else?
So that was a sequel. So yeah, so same Filmation made after they did their
Defenders
they
of the Earth.
spun off, like the Phantom was in there. There was like several different kind of pulp heroes gathered together. Yeah. But yeah, exactly the same.
And the idea for that really emanated from a ABC one-off called Popeye Meets the Man Who Hated Laughter, where they gathered up essentially all the King Features characters from both the comics and the adventure strips into one special.
That's awesome. I don't think I've ever seen it, but that sounds great.
I remember.
It's a shame that you guys don't do a series called Television Crack.
Yeah, well, yeah. God, there's so much of that. So much TV is lost.
Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of that is television crap as well. So.
Well, yes. Although I said I really like that 1970s or late 70s, early 80s Flash Gordon cartoon, and I recently went back as a result of watching this serial, went back and rewatched it and was surprised by how good it actually is. It's one of those things where you're like, oh, holy shit, this was really well written and sexy as well. And it's interesting because if later on He-Man uses a lot of the same sound effects and voices and animation styles because it's also Filmation, but the old Flash Gordon cartoon is a lot better and a lot more adult, surprisingly more adult.
I think
maybe even more adult than this 1936 serial in some ways.
I think there wasn't there another attempt at a live action series in 2000s as well? I think that didn't go anywhere. There might only be a pilot, or
I think you're right. Yes, yeah.
But and of course, let us not forget Flash Gordon.
Yes, 1970 what, 4, 5?
Yeah, which is I rewatched it actually not that long ago, and it's great because on the one hand it's juvenile and stupid, but on the other hand, the attention to detail they went to emulate elements from the 30s serial there's
a huge amount of love that went into making that. And the stop motion animation is way better than you should have in a cheapo semi-porno movie.
Yeah,
you be spending a bunch of time doing stop motion animation in a nudie flick. So that's great.
But anyway, so that's the wider world in which this takes place. So yes, so had both of you already seen the Flash Gordon serial?
I'd seen little bits of it. I'd never seen it from front to back before.
How about you, Geno? Have you seen this before?
No, but I've seen like maybe like pictures from it, like obviously from this magazine, and maybe like little clips here and there, but I'd never seen this front to back. So
that surprised me a little bit, just because I'd assumed this would have been catnip for you.
Well, see, I'm a science fiction fan, and I do love a lot of pulpy things, but I'm not necessarily a comic strip guy. I'm not necessarily a comic book guy, and I know that might surprise a lot of people, but it's true. I mean, the extent that I go with my comic books are like the Uncle Scrooge adventures.
That's good stuff. No, Carl Banks, I think, was the guy who did a lot of that stuff. He's considered to be one of the greats of the comic book world.
So yeah, I mean, that stuff, that's my wheelhouse. But as far as this stuff, I know screw all about Flash Gordon. So that's why, unfortunately, you and Nick are going to be the ones who are going to be carrying the brunt of this conversation, I'm afraid.
Well, I mean, so let's put it up front then first, because I'm kind of curious. Did you enjoy this?
Yes, and there's a specific character. I want both of you to guess who my favorite character in this entire serial was.
It's got to be Ming, isn't it?
No.
Was it Voltan? Because I'm a big fan of Voltan.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a Ming all the way.
Oh, really? Really?
I think that's a childhood thing, just because yeah, he immediately stood up, and it's fascinating watching this now. Something that I wouldn't have noticed when I was a child, but was so evident now, was how much he comes out of. He's like the nth degree of the yellow peril stereotyping Fu Manchu kind of character, right? Like when Flash Gordon screams at him something like, "Get your slimy hands off the white woman," you know. It's very much in that.
Charles Middleton, right? Charles Middleton never. It's funny, like they've dressed him with the long mustache and the hair and the kind of, but he never plays it as Asian. That's what I was, like he never gives us a stereotypical voice or anything like that. So,
but that's definitely where it comes up, because in the comics as well, he's painted bright yellow. Just
right, no, sure. I'm not arguing that it's not coming out of that history.
Yeah.
But at least they didn't go the extra step of giving him a horrible kind of accent and the rest of it, like trying to,
Right.
And then his daughter is not played as Asian particularly. Princess Aura.
She's played as hot.
Yeah, she's played as hot. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's true. That's from the page too. When you go back and look at the drawings, like they all do look like they've walked out of a harem, like their little silky brassieres and.
Well, what also struck me about,
like, what did Gene Rogers, right? They did, like, if I had to pick, and if I was better looking, I would definitely pick Priscilla Lawson over Gene Rogers any day of the week. My honest opinion.
Afraid I would too, just because she seems like, yeah.
That leaves Gene all for me. Excellent. Right, now that we've chauvinistically divided all up between us.
Although let's admit, like, there's no getting away from the fact that I don't think there's ever been or will be a better Flash Gordon than Buster Crabbe. Yes, he looks like a comic book come to life. And he's chiseled, his face, everything about him.
Yeah, and neither of us is getting a look in because Buster Crabbe is there.
Exactly.
And a huge part of this is basically the two women fighting over
him,
Flash Gordon, right? Because that's all he does, is basically just turn up and just like, yep, here I am. And that's all he needs to do, right?
Because he's gorgeous. I mean, and he's not like he's not a terrible actor. He's not a great actor, but he's
Olympic swimmer,
right.
Johnny Weissmuller, and he was as well. He was a Western star, much longer than he was Flash Gordon.
Science fiction.
Can I bring that? Can we discuss that?
Yeah.
Okay. You're talking about how Flash Gordon was like something you saw, as a child, and was like one of your first exposures, like sci-fi and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see these as a child per se. I just discovered these within the past few years. But my foray into the world of B-Westerns was Buster Crabbe's Billy the Kid / Billy Carson Westerns that he had made for PRC with Al St. John. Okay. Those things are a ton of fun. Like, if you just sit down and you just binge watch those, you're going to have a tailspin of fun with those things. I mean, I'm telling you, those are brilliant to watch. With Al St. John and Crabbe and him both have great chemistry, and that's how I discovered the great Buster Crabbe, was through those Poverty Row PRC Westerns that he made.
Right.
Okay,
yes, and he was Tarzan as well.
Yes.
Once, maybe 2 or 3 times, I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, they say he's famous for having been the only actor to play Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, and Tarzan. Right.
But he is most iconic here, I think, as Flash, right? I mean, just because he's just built for it, right? Like he has, and to that point as well, having a look at the comics again as well, it's actually surprising how close
Yes, he looks like, as I said, he looks like
everything. The
panels
I mean,
come to life.
until it diverges at a certain point, because there's maybe some things that they couldn't do with their budget or whatever. But it's certainly tonally, it's it's very, very, very faithful to the comics. Surprisingly so, actually.
I mean, looking at this, I mean, there is a specific reason why Priscilla Lawson just can't keep her hands off a Flash during this.
Right,
It's because he is so drop dead gorgeous, and I don't mind saying that.
No, and he's also shirtless.
I wonder how much of it is scripted, right, and how much of it Priscilla Lawson and Gene Rogers was just, I might as well just.
Buster, take your shirt off and oil yourself up again for the next thing, because he's constantly shirtless and oiled up in these various scenes. Like the torture scenes of him almost verge on the like Judas Priest video, wow. The scenes where he's like held up and there's this little sparking thing, and I'm like, ooh, if I was a man of that persuasion, ooh, maybe I'm almost there. That Buster Crabbe he's a man slab.
And I personally, but
Yeah. So no, he's great. And then and yet I like the fact that there really is no winking, right? At the audience. It's all played completely straight, and I don't have a problem with iguanas with horns on them, or a guy in an ape suit with a unicorn horn, or which I'm pretty sure shows up in an episode of Star Trek 30 years later, that exact same ape
But
suit.
I think we could all agree that the one thing we do have a problem with is the painted bear.
Yes, King Voltan's badger bear
that he spanks really hard on the ass.
I thought that was dangerous. I was like, dude, that's not a good way to get mauled by a bear.
They also have Earth tigers on the planet Mongo as well, which I was quite surprised to learn.
Yes.
So just it's episodic as all hell, which is what's great about it, because it just changes the whole time. But basically, the planet Mongo is heading towards Earth, which is causing all sorts of things.
Weather problems and chaos. Yep.
So I keep wanting to call him Professor Jerkoff after Flesh Gordon, but it's Zarkov, as played by Frank Shannon, has built.
Who is Irish? And so that was interesting to me. I kept hearing the accent because he's doing this very mysterious, I don't know what it is, Eastern European kind of thing, but he is Irish, and his Irish accent comes through every third or fourth word to me, because I have an ear for the Irish accent. So I was like, oh, that's weird. And then
he's from like Slovenia via County Mayo or something, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And then the other thing about him is just like they dress him reasonably and sensibly for the beginning of the serial, but when they put him in the tiny short shorts and he's kind of got terrible posture, the poor guy, and I'm just like, oh, like, come on. Like, I mean, sure with Buster Crabbe, get him in those tiny whiteys that he's running around in, but don't put poor Frank Shannon in tiny underpants.
Right. And like everybody, almost all the male characters, with the exception, thankfully, of Voltan, all are decked out in the short shorts, which
Prince Baron is, he's not quite as good looking as was Timothy Dalton, who plays that part in the Mike Hodges remake.
Right.
But
isn't Timothy Dalton because they're not in this serial. It's in
the Robin Hood guys,
the Archers. Yeah.
But I thought that was Prince, but maybe I'm wrong. Okay.
I can't remember. It's been a while since I saw the other two. Because I think the other two, the sequel serials, are even better in a way, because they're slightly more expansive. Like there's a lot of this on the old Universal sets, right? There's a lot of sets from like the Bride of Frankenstein and the Mummy.
Right.
Yeah, I thought I saw like the castle scene, castle set from Dracula.
Yeah.
Yep.
Back of Notre
a lot of the machinery.
The Kenneth Spaden lab equipment.
Right.
Yeah, all that stuff is in there. But again, I might be remembering wrong, but I seem to remember from the sequels they got out and about more, which basically just means, wandering about Bronson Canyon some more. But it just seemed
Yeah.
there was less set bound
studio bound stuff.
Yeah.
But it
But
just
yeah, they
cracks along at such a great pace.
Oh, it's
you
great.
know.
They go to the planet Mongo, as ruled over by Ming, the merciless. The fantastic Charles.
Immediately, two giant iguanas have a fight, which is great.
And Charles Middleton's great. Just being exposed to this as a young person as well, it's been a lifelong joy for me when Charles Middleton turns up in other films. So so watching a B Western from the 30s or 40s, or an old mystery or something, and Charles Middleton, I am already on side with that film just because Charles Middleton's in it. So that's it's just a bonus of having grown up with Ming. And then it's basically them. There's all these other people who are they all claim to be the rightful rulers of Mongo as suppressed by Ming, and they help Flash, and they sometimes don't help Flash. And Gene Rogers and Priscilla Lawson just want to be alone with him and fuck his brains out. And then all these different creatures turn up, and it's just non-stop. It changes all the time. There's a whole sequence in a radium mine, which
that's great. They're shoveling radium into a furnace.
Straight out of Metropolis as well, right? I was thinking watching this time, this is probably Metropolis referencing, I think.
And Voltan has a great line there where she, like, I think it's when he's trying to seduce, all of the scenes where he's trying to seduce Dale Arden are amazing. The part where she gets upset and then he starts making shadow puppets on the wall, like just like so weird and awesome.
He was my favorite freaking character. I love his laugh.
But then he says something like she's
I'm so
upset
glad he had a face turn.
Yes, me too. Yes, that he went from villain to hero. I mean, have you seen Geno? Have you seen the 1980 movie?
No, I haven't. I think I should check it out now.
Okay, because do you know who Brian Blessed is? A British actor.
Oh my gosh, is he Voltan?
He plays Voltan, and he's off the charts.
I have to watch it now. I love
He's the best part of the movie, and as in many ways Voltan might be the best part of this. And what shocked me was watching this.
Nick,
what? Go ahead.
One of it's either Brian Blessed,
okay,
or whatever his name is, who used to play Jason King, Eccentric Millionaire. He's in Flash Gordon, right?
Okay, yes. Yeah.
He's the character. Disgusting. It's either him or Brian Blessed. They're both kind of Sorry,
they're both chewing the scenery a lot, but I would say that like what shocked me though was when I was watching this and when Voltan showed up, and I was like, oh my god, like I assumed that was just Brian Blessed being Brian Blessed, but it's not. It is Brian Blessed doing his version of that actor from the original. There's a lot of overlap there. I was like, wow, it's really the same performance, just British rather than American. I assume the actor who played Voltan is American, but anyway, he does some offhand thing where he says like, it's a great way to die, or like he's like, it's like dying of radiation poisoning, that's fine.
Yes.
I do feel like poor what's her face Dale has really the short end of the stick in this thing. 90% of her dialogue is just Flash.
Yes.
Over and over again.
Or being mauled. Like the one thing about Pascal's Flash as well I've noticed is whenever he like goes to comfort Dale, like he's very robust. He's like, he like grabs her, like, and you're thinking, fuck, that's going to leave a bruise. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd love to leave bruises on Gene Rogers, but it seems.
Hey, you know what, Clive? Love hurts. Yes, it really does hurt.
It does if you're Flash Gordon's girlfriend.
Did you notice the number of times Voltan, she faints into his arm and he just grabs a boob? Like at least 3 or 4 times. I was like, every time she falls into his arm, he's like, he cups a boob. I was like,
of saving the universe, I believe.
Right.
Again, Voltan's the best part of this whole darn thing.
He is pretty awesome. And those you got to think those wings must have been heavy because they don't skip. So there are some different people, like there's the shark people who just turn out to be dudes with bathing caps on. And there's the lion men who just turn out to be guys with beards, as opposed to actual lion men. But the hawk men do have a full set of wings. We do see them fly at one point. But you have to think those wings were probably fairly heavy. Like, it wasn't like they had access to,
Right.
you know, I don't know, like,
But
anyway.
to your point, I think this is worth bringing up because I think if no one's ever seen any of this stuff before and you say that stuff and it's true, I think it's worth mentioning though that it doesn't, because it's all delivered so straight and it's so high camp and it's so like, more so that the 1980 movie slightly winks towards the audience every now and again.
Yes.
Why that movie for me is in turn charming and irritating depending on my mood. Like,
yes,
this is
for sure.
Right up, and I think it's worth. It's never laughable. It's never like you go with it because they go with it. So yes, it is just some guys in bathing caps. What the fuck? I'm buying into it. It's like going to the theater and okay, this is the theater. You look at the set. I know this is not a real street, but I'm buying into it. The suspension of disbelief. You go with it. I think in Flash Gordon, like it's never a chore to give yourself over to it, right? You fuck it. Why not? I go with it. It's great. It creates its own world and you're happy to dwell in it, right?
Yeah, agreed.
Also worth mentioning how soothing. I'm not exactly so the beginning is so of course it's a cliffhanger serial, which is great. I love all that. I love the fact that you're oh shit, how did they get out of that one? But what I like about it at the beginning of each episode, what I noticed is it starts with this kind of jazzy theme, which I think is Franz Liszt. It's so soothing.
Yes, it doesn't really. It's not that blasting John Williams score you expect. It's very
every time
mellow.
I started a new chapter, that I was like, oh, this is so relaxing. It was just an added bonus to the whole thing for me.
I will say though, so I talked about my grandfather before, at least in comics form, maybe in one of the shows. My granddad, who hated, for example, the 1960s Batman show, because he felt it made a mockery of Burgess Meredith and Cesar Romero and other great actors of his time. He hated serials, and he used to call them follower-uppers. And he was like, I couldn't stand those follower-uppers. You know, you'd go to the cinema and you'd see the middle part of a story. And then you might not go back for like 2 weeks, and then you he just was infuriated by follower-uppers. So
the more I hear about your grandfather, the more I like him. He seems like a cantankerous fellow that I would have.
Old Irish man. Yes.
Yeah.
Strong opinions about cinema for sure. But it was fun growing up in a house with him. If you didn't want to watch Batman, you had to wait till we went for a walk. Like
I mean, most of these cliffhangers, a few of them are, but it's worth noticing because, like Kathy Bates in Misery points out, so often they cheated, right? Like they showed you that extra bit of footage they didn't show you the last time where they jumped out of the car going over the cliff or whatever. There's not too much of that.
No,
it's pretty
there
much.
Really isn't.
It's pretty much they play by the rules, right? Which is another reason I think I liked it when I was a child. I think when I was a child, I remember seeing other serials. There was one I remember them showing on SOC with Bela Lugosi, which was called SOS Coast Guard. I remember another one, and like them just cheating. Like, that's not,
that's not what happened last week.
That didn't, which maybe you could get away with it when it was once a week because people forgot, but I was watching these every day and I had a child's brain which wasn't addled by alcohol like it is now, so I actually remembered things clearly. So I appreciated that they didn't take the piss and they didn't cheat.
No, this was very easy to watch. In fact, it was almost hard not to binge it in bigger chunks. I would force myself to stop after 2 episodes or 3 just so that I could kind of savor it and come back to it the next day. But it's very easy to watch. I mean, again, I think maybe because it's just so propulsive and headlong and just it starts and it just goes.
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason why it was put on the National Film Registry as being culturally and historically significant.
Yeah. I agree. Do you think both of you will go on to watch the other 2 Flash Gordon?
I will, because Buster Crabbe is a sizzling hunk of man steak. I would and I think I'm interested to know about the cowboy stuff because, as probably from watching some of the other shows, a lot of my love of cowboy movies kind of comes through the Italian connection of becoming obsessed with spaghetti westerns.
Oh,
so
my friend, when we do the Poverty Row show, we're going to invite you on and have a few powwows with you, my friend.
Okay, so there's a bit of a blank spot in my knowledge of kind of that more American B Western stuff.
Don't get your hopes up too high though, Nick. As far as I know, there is no one where, you know, Buster Crabbe turns up in modern day New York City and goes and visits the mine shaft or anything like that. So
okay, all right.
It's not cruising territory we're in.
Okay,
know,
okay.
But, yeah.
He's never in assless chaps at any point.
Just curious, did your good lady wife her indoors happen to watch any of this with you?
Oh, it's funny. Yeah, she mentioned.
What was her take on Buster?
She mentioned that I should mention her today. No, she actually did watch for once. Like, you know, sometimes she will watch things with me, sometimes not. But she did actually watch most of this with me, and yes, she was quite taken. And not just actually, I think because there's my wife also loves like Italian Hercules movies, like that kind of like.
Oh, I love those.
Right? A lot, and so we often watch those together. And there's a lot of, because they use so many of these kind of Roman, like in this kind of costume raiding thing they were doing, obviously when they made the serial. There's a lot of men in tiny, other than tiny pants, tiny skirts, like these little peplum skirts. And yes, that's cheesecake to my wife, or beefcake or whatever. No, she thoroughly enjoyed Flash Gordon.
Right, right. We're down to the last.
So yes, one for the ladies. If you can get past the fact that poor Dale is like the worst character in the world, but made up for by the fact that Princess Aura is one of the best. Like, she saves Flash Gordon's life so many times. What does Dale ever do other than faint and scream his name? She's completely
right. Which
useless.
is again, why does Flash go off with Dale at the end? Like, what's like?
No idea.
See, I totally get it. So I don't know what that says, but we're down to the last minute here. So, does anyone have anything to add about Flash Gordon in record time, or should we jump off?
Well, I mean, I think you could play a drinking game with this, where you could either take a drink every time that Dale says Flash, or you could do what I started to do, which really annoyed my wife, which was to go every time she said Flash. To do the I'm not going to explain why I did that. You know, or you don't know. Right,
there you go. Some drinking games for you to play.
Yes.
Right. So until next time, which might be never, this was YakiCineSoba with me, Clive Davis, and them.
Self, Nick.
And Geno.